Okay, so the best deck in the game is still Highlander Hunter in my opinion. I climbed to Legend with it mostly along with a Tempo Demon Hunter. Tempo Demon Hunter is second, just spoiler alert. This deck is very flexible. It has very few bad matchups, and the bad matchups that it does have, you can actually still win because you have flexibility with Zephyrus. You can freeze aggressive matchups with like the Shadow Weaver, and if you have rushes on curve to kill their big threats, you can actually survive the onslaught and then get to your late game and win the game. Generally, actually, real quick, my version is a little bit weird. There are versions that run Phase Stalker and like 2 or 3 secrets. I decided to go for a slightly more minion-based build with the Bone Shoe Brawler. I threw in an Imprisoned Felmaw, which some decks weren't using. I threw in some other things as well. Oh, the Waste Warden for Demon Hunter to kill off all of their demons in one fell swoop. This deals with the Satyr Overseer so well. It takes one of your worst matchups and just like swings it around. And then I put an Og Merchant in order to combo with the Bone Shoe Brawler, but also it combos with things like Fairy Dragon, which can't be targeted, as well as the Evasive Feywing. So a lot of little synergies in this deck. It takes a little bit of time to learn, but once you understand the importance of these cards and the fact that you need to use Zephyrus really early into some aggro matchups, but really late into the slower matchups, the deck really just comes into its own. It's really tempo. If you look at the curve here, it has a decent number of 2 and 3 drops. Not that many 4s, but that's okay. The 4s that you do have are very powerful, and you can always just play another 3 drop right after it. It's fine. And then some 5 drops, it's good. And then once you get to the late game, you have Dino Tamer Bran, Siamat, Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, potentially Zephyrus, depending on the matchup. And I used to have Nagrand Slam, but I took it out recently because it was too slow, and I was playing against a lot of Demon Hunters. And Spell Druids ramped up too quickly to deal with. I will say that the Waste Warden is a card you could take out if you want to. And the Faceless Corruptor combos really well with Desert Spear. That's the one last combo that I'd recommend. And other than that, I'd say that it's the best deck in the game. It's close with Demon Hunter and one of the Warrior decks, and I'll get into that now. So Tempo Demon Hunter is obviously number 2. It's why it's number 2 on the list. But I think that it is number 2 for a couple of reasons. You might be saying, isn't Warrior better? Technically, I would say yes. Maximum skill cap, I think that Warrior is better. But Tempo Demon Hunter is a lot simpler to play. And there are a couple of mistakes that some people make that can be absolutely devastating and lower the win rate, but you can fix very easily, and it makes this deck go from really good to really, really good. Maybe not literally top 2, which I think is still Highlander Hunter and maybe Warrior, but because of how simple this deck is and easy to play, and just it's fast too, so it's best for climbing, I would say that this deck is a higher tier. Simply based on extra factors other than just raw power of the deck, maximum, you know? So basically what you want to do is you want to mulligan for 1 drops, obviously, and 2s, and then Satyr Overseer. Everything else you dump. Chaos Strike, out of here. I-Beam, out of here. Frozen Shadow Weaver, out of here. Other than into Tempo Demon Hunter, freezing their face can kind of be important. So if you already have a 1-drop, you can keep this. Everything else, gone. In terms of the mistakes I see people make, it really just has to do with like outcasts and stuff. Like the first thing actually doesn't have to do with outcasts, it's the Umberwing. Don't hit with the weapon unless you have to, unless you're getting synergy with the Overseer or the Adept, or you have another weapon in your hand. Just hold on to it. Having a free auto attack trigger for things like Battle Fiend, Satyr, and the Adept can be really, really helpful, and I would just recommend holding on to it. Next thing is the fact that Altruist, sometimes people hold on to it for too long trying to get a massive play, but really sometimes if all you can do is play it and deal like 3 damage or something, that's still worth it, especially if you're able to kill some of the big threats on their board. Kayn, Sun Fury. Honestly, play this guy on turn 4 for tempo in most matchups. Druid, maybe not, because you want to get over taunts. But in most other matchups, just play it for tempo. No other like matchups have enough taunts for this to really be important. You can either go 3 damage face or trade into something if you need to. And then the last thing is Skull of Gul'dan. People prioritize it too much, and I think they play it in situations where they don't necessarily need to. There are a lot of cases where I'm like, okay, I still have 2 or 3 playable cards in my hand. I might as well dump those out and then play Skull of Gul'dan like the next turn rather than playing it super duper early. Maybe I'm wrong about that, and I actually do play early sometimes if I only have like 1 or 2 cards in my hand. But if I have several cards, I'd rather just play the tempo rather than potentially drawing nothing and passing the turn. Like, I really need to apply as much pressure with this deck as possible. That's how you win. That's about it. I hope you guys enjoy this deck, honestly. It's pretty fun. I'd recommend it. Let's just move on to the next one. So the next deck on this list is actually Bomb Warrior. I think Bomb Warrior is really, really good because it counters the 2 other best decks in the meta. It just has a higher skill cap and it's harder to play, which is why I put it as number 3. It's harder to just pick up and immediately play. But you have really good combos with Risky Skipper and Armor Smith to deal with early aggression with Demon Hunter, as well as just armor and weapons in general to kill minions. Wormhole Challenger is insane at killing minions at the beginning of the game, and then you leave it up alive. You have late game finishers with Dr. Boom, Deathwing, as well as Grommash Hellscream. Grommash Hellscream you can combo with Risky Skipper, or if you have some armor, you can combo it with Shield Slam to get it off. Or you can just trade it into something and then make them deal with a big minion the turn after that. So it's got a couple of viable ways of triggering his ability. And overall, he's very, very good. If you don't want to play him, you can play Karagath, the Prime. But I think Grommash, after playing both versions a little bit, having that extra burst can be useful, especially if they destroy your weapon and you don't have as many bombs left in your deck. In terms of keeping, you generally want to keep Sky Raider, Corsair Cache, Anchor, and then if you have 1 extra card into Demon Hunter, I'd keep Wormhole Challenger so that way you can kill off a minion if it's important, like ASAP, right? It can be very, very, very helpful that way. Everything else, get rid of. Armor Smith, Risky Skipper, you can also keep into Demon Hunter specifically, but everything else, you actually don't want to keep these most of the time. And yeah, that's about it. In terms of just power of the deck, I already told you what it beats. But the power really comes from the Wrench Caliber. If you play against a Highlander Hunter, honestly, coining out the Wrench Caliber to get bombs in their deck as soon as possible, give them as few turns as possible to draw a response or play their Highlander cards can be absolutely massive. So sometimes I coin this out, or I just play it literally as soon as possible, and then watch them cry as they're not able to play their Bran on turn 7 because they have 2 bombs in their deck. One big thing, Blastmaster Boom, you don't have to wait for them to have a ton of bombs in their deck. In fact, even if they just have 1, he's a viable play. Like, don't be greedy with him. Sometimes you just have to play him for 1 bomb. Sometimes if you have nothing else to play him for no bombs. He's still a 7-mana 7/7. He builds tempo if you have nothing else on the board or you're in trouble for some other reason. Just playing him is fine. You don't always have to be greedy. But if your board state is fine and you have other plays, you don't have to play him. But that's about it. That's Bomb Warrior, everybody. It's really strong. It's really strong, actually. I absolutely love this deck. I think it's my favorite Warrior deck of the viable ones right now. Speaking of viable Warrior decks, Enrage Warrior is number 4. I normally don't like having multiple decks of the same class, but like these two are really close together, very similar play styles, except Enrage Warrior relies more on burst, whereas the Bomb Warrior relies more on sustained damage with bombs, and then a little bit of burst at the end. But Enrage Warrior, my god, it is a powerful, powerful deck. I would highly recommend it to anybody who is trying it out, or anybody who wants to try out Warrior. I think that is, again, fairly difficult. You have to manage the health of your minions very well. You have to figure out the calculations to make sure you can play Blood Boiled Brute, and when you can trade and when you can't. It's a little difficult, I will admit. And because of that, my win rate with it personally is about like 56% after not a ton of games. If I played it more and got the better hang of it, I would probably be better. But as someone who plays the game a lot, even I struggle with this deck a little bit. To be fair, I do play like a ton of different decks, trying to make as much content for you guys as possible. But even so, I'm an experienced player who's seen this deck played multiple times, and even I struggled piloting it sometimes. It's difficult. In terms of overall power, though, I think that it has some of the highest maximum power in the game. And if you want to take out some of the cards and go for the Egg Warrior build instead of just normal Enrage, you can definitely do that too. I'd put both of them on about the same level of power. It really comes down to personal preference at that point, which one you want to play. In terms of keeps, it's literally the exact same as Bomb Warrior. Basically, Sky Raider, Risky Skipper, and Armor Smith into Demon Hunter. Corsair Cache always. Sky Raider was always, by the way. Anchor always. And then Wormall Challenger into Tempo Demon Hunter as well. Or just a deck you think might be aggro, like I guess Hunter as well. So you can deal with a Fairy Dragon. It could be a decent keep. Other than that, it's the exact same. And yeah, that's about it. Also, the Hellscream Inner Rage combo is a guaranteed way of triggering his thing, so you don't have to do it with Risky Skipper. And if you have the coin, and you haven't used the coin in the first couple of turns, saving Inner Rage, Grommash, coin, Bloodsworn Mercenary is absolutely massive. If you can somehow luck out, not have to use the coin, and then get to a late game where you have both of those cards, it can be really, really strong. That's about it. Moving on to the last deck. And then the honorable mention, which is a personal favorite of mine. Let's make this quick, okay? I personally hate this deck, but gotta give credit where credit's due. It is a top-tier deck. I'd say that it's number 5. I feel like because of the fact that it can totally miss sometimes if you don't get ramp and you could just get rushed down, I don't think it has the same potential as some of the other decks. But, like, dude, holy... Every single time I play against this deck, it seems like they always have Breath of Dreams and or Overgrowth, ramp up really well, get the exotic Mount Seller off, build a board, play Ysera, overflow, develop a massive board, have a full hand of stuff. After you wipe it, they play Mount Seller number 2, and then worst case scenario, at the end of the game, they Glowfly Swarm Soul of the Forest. They have like 4 distinct win condition phases, right? Glowfly Swarm 1, Exotic Mount Seller, Ysera Dragon Friends, whatever, and then Glowfly Swarm 2. All of them are really hard to deal with, and because of the fact that this deck has a lot of draw, you actually get them relatively consistently, and it's fairly annoying. But like, if you don't have them on curve, or say you lose them to Fungal Fortunes, sometimes you just automatically lose the game and there's nothing you can do about it. Personally, I find that annoying. Also, I find playing against the deck annoying. But that's generally how you play the deck. In terms of mulligans, into aggro you keep Crystal Power. Always keep Breath of Dreams and Fungal Fortunes and Overgrowth. And Glowfly Swarm. Those are the 4 that you want to go for. Everything else you pretty much dump. Exotic Mount Seller, you don't want a hard mulligan for it. But if you have it in your hand, you can keep it so that way you don't accidentally lose to Fungal Fortunes. And you don't lose one of your best mid-game win conditions. And that's about it for this deck. I just want to move on to my personal favorite one. So this is the honorable mention deck. It's a personal favorite of mine. I'm 12-4 with it. It was one of the ones that got me untilted when I went on a big losing streak from rank 1 to like rank 3-ish. It got me back on track. This deck is really, really strong, guys. Like, the sample size is small, and nobody else really plays this deck, so I can't necessarily say it's top tier yet. But personally, I've had great experience with it. It has a couple of noticeable flaws, like these high cost minions make it slightly difficult for things like Altruist to pop off or other outcast synergies like Skull of Gul'dan and I-Beam, but since you only have singletons of these outcast cards, it actually doesn't matter too much. Like, it matters sometimes, but the increased flexibility by having a ton of singleton cards that can help into certain matchups, having Zephyrus, having actual defensive options with the Battlelord and the Bone Wraith can be very, very beneficial. Obviously, you can't run duplicates of really, really strong cards like the Glavebound Adept, or Skull of Gul'dan, or Umberwing, or any of those, or even Battle Fiend for that matter. But the tempo is made up for by having still a lot of those 1-drops and 2-drops and even 3-drops. If you want to, you can take out one of the 2-drops, probably Felfin, Netherwalker, or Sightless Watcher. I wouldn't take out Spectral Sight because since you don't have 2 Skulls of Gul'dan, you kind of need the extra card draw. It's pretty important. But anyway, you can take out Watcher, maybe Netherwalker, maybe Ferocious Felfin. Try to put in another 3-drop. Honestly, I wanted to, but it's pretty hard because there aren't that many 3-drops that you want to have in the deck. And the ones that you do want to have in your deck, 1, 2, 3, you already have. So, couple of noticeable flaws like that. But overall, the deck runs really, really well. Most of the time, you get a good curve. Worst case scenario, turn 3, you just play a 2-drop in Hero Power because Demon Hunter can do that, and you're fine. Like, it's not game losing to not have a 3 play. But overall, the deck functions really, really well. It's like Highlander Hunter. It's very similar to Highlander Hunter, actually. It doesn't have as big of a power play on turn 7 with Bran, but other than that, same tempo style, ramp up a little bit, and then have several really powerful win conditions. And to make up for Bran, you have Metamorphosis, which essentially does 10 damage over 2 turns starting turn 6. So, like, still has a really strong win condition as well, along with all the other cards, and I love this deck, honestly. I'm like 12-4 with it. It's super strong, and I would recommend it if you want a new deck and you don't want to play just normal tempo Demon Hunter. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the guide. These are the top decks in the meta right now, and with one honorable mention, Highlander Demon Hunter. And if there are any decks that I missed, feel free to tell me, and catch you in the next one. See ya.